2020, and welcome to the thrown together ad hoc, put us all together in a meat grinder solid waste discussion that is separate from our normal Public Works Committee. So greetings everybody, hope everybody had a good year. I'm excited to be back. We have some large goals to accomplish for 2020, and the most exciting thing and also the most anxious thing for me is to bring to head and closure a solid waste decision for 2020. We have been working diligently in 2019 and have made progress, and we have a long way to go, but we are gaining on. Tonight we have some guests from our electric associations, and I'm going to let Mayor Ketron introduce you all, and we look forward to some discussion and as we explain why you're here and why you've been invited. So I'm going to let Mayor introduce you for the record and for all the folks at home who are watching.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Happy New Year to all of you. As you recall, at one of our last meetings, it was a discussion around the table. We're looking for new sources of ways to handle our trash stream. And I believe Chairman P had actually, since he works in the industrial park down in Laverne, being the largest industrial facility area, was interested in, is there a possibility of putting in something similar to what Huntsville, Alabama has. They have a gasification facility where they take all their garbage, they generate through this plasma gasification, they generate and burn their waste and sell it back to, or sell it, put it on the grid, and basically they do all the electrical supply for Redstone Arsenal inside that military encampment. So kind of the idea of the concept was something similar, right, Chairman P? And so you all asked me to reach out to come to this meeting, which I did, and just happened to be talking to Chris Jones, President of Middle Tennessee Electric, and he said, I can handle that for you. You know, because I told him what the committee, what you all wanted to hear from, to see is there a possibility, or what's the downsides, upsides, et cetera, of doing something similar to that. And so Chris called me back, and so tonight we've got representing Middle Tennessee Electric is Jeff, and it's Brockett.
Yes.
Jeff Brockett, and I'm sorry, your name?
Tim. Yep.
And then we have Chris Templeton representing TVA. They're here to, Mr. Chairman, I would just invite them up to the table and let's just have a round table discussion. NES never would call Chris back, and so they're not represented here tonight, even though they do supply some of the electrical needs for that area right across the line into Rutherford County and Laverne. So, gentlemen, if y'all don't mind, come on up to the table.
So Chris said this was so easy, he's just going to send Jeff and Tim to come represent. All right. Well, gentlemen, as the mayor explained, we are looking at multiple different avenues to handle our solid waste. And to many of us, what makes the most sense is if we have a way to convert our solid waste into energy, why not take advantage of that? It's a clean way to clean if you spend a lot of money, a clean way to take our trash and municipal solid waste and turn that into something usable and really reduce or try and get us to that zero waste or zero landfill mantra. We have seen a beautiful facility in Huntsville, Alabama that's been in operation for several years, a large facility that takes municipal trash and just burns it, makes it into steam, I believe, which then into electricity. And that, they have a great end user, which is Redstone Arsenal. So they're sitting pretty in a nice spot. We're not so fortunate. But we spend several $1 million a year on electricity for all of our schools and government buildings. We have a beautiful industrial park, as Commissioner P, Chairman P alluded to in Laverne, a lot of big industry that could be a user. So we're trying to just pitch some ideas, see the viability. If we could focus our energies on some type of waste to energy to produce electricity. Now, we all know we live in TVA country where electricity, thankfully, is fairly inexpensive. So there's a double-edged sword there. We buy cheap electricity, or we bring in industrial customers to Tennessee knowing that that's a huge plus, and yet we're asking you to, hey, we'd like to make electricity. So we get the joke, right? So tell us about what would we have to do? What could we do? Are we barking up the wrong tree? Is there a possibility for a little bitty old Rutherford County to spend millions of dollars to build a waste to energy facility with the end product being electricity? And what could we do with it within our own little confines? So tell me the good, the bad, the ugly, the legal, illegal. The big brother's going to say, no, you can't do that. Just lay it out for us. This is just an open discussion to help us get educated on what we can and can't do.
You want to start? You want me to?
But I'm good either way. Because I think the first question I would have is I would be curious to know what size is the generating facility in Huntsville?
Mr. Nolan, do you have recollection of their intake or output?
I'm probably going to have it wrong. I think it's close to 200 tons a day.
Well, and I'm talking
And
about
what is that?
megawatt hours.
Yeah, he's
Oh, no.
he's like he
Yeah,
wants
current.
gigawatts.
They're generating steam. They're not actually generating electricity right now.
Okay.
But they've been looking at generating electricity.
So they are generating steam and selling that steam to Redstone Arsenal. Okay.
which then through turbines and everything else, are they producing electricity though?
I don't know.
And why I asked
I think it's on the other side of the
that,
fence, but
Yeah.
Huntsville
because
doesn't really
why
care.
I asked that is that Redstone Arsenal is a direct serve customer of TVA.
Okay,
So we provide them power.
right.
So that's I guess the first question I was trying to kind of understand.
Yeah, I was under the impression they were converting it.
Yeah, we don't want to get Redstone in trouble.
Yeah.
It was our
no,
understanding.
and
it's our
that's-
understanding they're converting
No,
steam to
and
electricity.
I'll be honest, because there's a program that is designed for what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's so I think where I would start with this, because that I'm always very careful in these conversations about making sure that accurate information is provided. Just like we're talking about Redstone Arsenal, that I mean they're a huge customer to TVA, that they're not being powered solely by
Yeah.
this trash plant. So,
Right.
and just so I try to figure out what's really going on,
Yeah.
where we stand. But because to me, where I would start with this, that yes, you most certainly, if you put in what we would call a cogen facility, where you take trash and burn it and use it, install a generator and produce power, that there's a program designed for this, and it's called a Dispersed Power Program. And the Dispersed Power Program, there's different options, but I don't think we're really at that point in the conversation to get into the details of it. But how this program works, Dispersed Power Program, is that you would essentially sell your power back to TVA.
Okay.
TVA would pay you a avoided cost, but it's somewhere around 2 cents a kilowatt hour. And so we would, and that varies because it depends on what that avoided cost is for the month. So, but the Dispersed Power Program goes all the way back. It was established in 1981, and it was established through the Public Utilities Regulatory Policies Act of 1978, which is PURPA. And so with the Dispersed Power Program, that it essentially allows anyone that less than 80 megawatts that you can install a system that there are interconnection agreements that it has to, whether that would be directly to TVA or whether that would be to Middle Tennessee Electric system, that's really the only requirement that's needed, that we have to buy that power.
Okay, you said less than 80
Megawatts, yes, sir.
So if an entity like us or is producing less than 80 megawatts, you are forced.
We're required by federal
to
law.
buy back.
Yep, to buy that back.
So if we're producing 81 megawatts, what happens then?
Basically, that gets into this other part where of how it, depending upon how it's configured, that the 80 megawatts, most likely you would sell back to TVA, and whatever that 1 megawatt, then you would need to find something that
We eat it.
yeah. that you would use it for. Like
Okay.
you might power a building
Okay.
or something like that.
All right.
What does a megawatt supply? 80 megawatts, what would that supply?
Yeah, can you light up the square with 80 megawatts, or do you
80
do you launch
megawatts.
rockets?
80 megawatts is pretty large because I'm thinking of one of my small systems that has, and they have some industrial customers and things like that, but an entire system or a local power company that has around 5,000 customers, some of those industrial and things like that, is roughly like 30 megawatts. So you're talking about when you get up to 80 megawatts, you're talking about a sizable amount. Like Middle Tennessee Electric's, that their peak for the year is about 1,600 megawatts. So if that, I know that's still some large numbers, but
A megawatt, our megawatt solar facility in College Grove, it 1 megawatt can produce enough power for about 125,000 homes.
Really? Okay.
How many? 125,000.
So you could do 47 schools. You could power 47 schools.
Is it
125 homes.
Excuse me.
I was about to say 125,000.
Sorry. Excuse me.
I was doing the math in my head there, man. 125,000.
How many kilowatts in a megawatt?
1,000.
1,000?
All right, let me ask, put you on the spot question. I like you, and I'm not trying to get you upset. You said 2 cents a kilowatt, all right?
That's what TVA would
Would buy
purchase.
back.
Yes.
I have no idea what that means. So let me ask you this. What does Becky pay for kilowatt at her house?
About 10 cents.
Okay. Because we'll have to decide if we're going to build, pick a number, a $500 million plan.
Mm-hmm.
Is it worth doing if we're only making 2 cents a kilowatt? So, I mean, that's going to be the elephant in the room
Mhm.
right off the bat. So, again, that's the double-edged sword of living in TVA country. We're blessed with cheap electricity, but in our situation, if we want to use it to get rid of our waste in a smart way, there may not be profit enough in it to do that. Okay, and if Becky's paying 10, that means big industrial users are probably paying even less than a homeowner would be. Okay.
Because that's, and I will make sure that's pretty accurate for y'all's average residential rate.
10
isn't
cents.
it? Which-
Between 9 and 10, depending on time of year.
And guys, you don't have to ask for my, just jump in.
Well, two quick questions
Yeah.
about what you've already stated. First of all, if we're generating this, is that considered green energy to y'all? Because you have a green energy program. I'm just curious, does this fall into that category?
Let's see here.
And let me add to that, one thing that we've actually looked at is this waste away program where they're making fuel pellets in place of coal, which supposedly the output is not going to have the CO2 problems. So, that's one of the things we're looking at. Like I said, we've got everything on the board right now.
And this would not fall under the green programs. This would just be TVA buying power from Rutherford County. That's
Okay,
as far as our involvement would be.
I like straight answers, thank you. All right, the other question is, this 1% that we create over 80 megawatts, that we could use ourselves, can we use your transmission lines to send it to our schools? You know, we're spending $11 million a year on electricity right now on our school and our other government buildings like this one we're sitting in. So that over 80 megawatts, can we transfer that on your lines and use it that way? Or do we have to come up with an alternate method, say find somebody in the industrial park that would use it? So what's the answer on that?
You can't wheel power on their
Yeah,
lines.
you had to find somebody to use it.
Yeah. Because the way,
How'd you put that? How was, we got to find somebody to use it? Was that your?
well, and when he says somebody to use it, that when you sell it back, when you sell that 80 megawatts back to us, that it essentially goes on our grid that covers 7 states, Tennessee Valley. That what we're talking about, that if you're generating electricity, because the way cogens most of the time work is that it is a function, like the heat is an after, because just like what you're talking about, I guarantee you that the facility is right beside the arsenal and it goes right there. So that's when it's against our power contract for somebody else to come in and wheel power on our transmission system, because that's paid for through that. What you're talking about, that cogen site would need to be right beside the school that you would want power. Because
So we couldn't have schools all over the county.
no.
Okay.
Well, that's kind of flies in the face of what I was told when I was up at McMinnville. They said that there was federal legislation that had passed that you guys, if we were generating power, could transmit it for us.
That is the 80 megawatts that they're talking about. You sell it back to us, we transmit that power. That it goes onto our transmission system. Once you generate it, it comes back onto the transmission system and is distributed valley-wide.
So it becomes your property at 2 cents, then you send it out.
So if we give them, we sell to you for 2 cents, you turn around and charge us 10 cents?
Yes.
Okay.
Because that's for all the things that we just talked about, like you start talking about transformers, losses, all of those things, that's included. That all we're paying for is that generated power, and then what you just said, that there's a lot of infrastructure that goes along with supplying power throughout the valley.
And where that 2 cents comes from is called avoided cost. So I'm gonna speak, if I get out of turn, get me back in, okay? And that avoided cost is a number that TVA comes up with that it keeps them from turning on some other system,
A generator.
a generating system of some sort to supply power to the grid. And so that avoided cost is quite often much less than what you pay at retail.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out that we're paying $400 million for a 2 cent kilowatt. I mean, do you understand what I'm talking about?
Yes, sir.
That's what I'm concerned with, because it's, it's a lot of money, so I'm trying to figure out how long it's gonna take for $400 million.
Craig, do you know, what is the 80 kilowatt, is that per day or per year? Wait, help me scope that.
Yeah, and again,
See, that, I don't know what happens per day. Is it per day?
It's at any given time.
Well, 80 megawatts is the capacity of the system. So like 80 megawatts is
Okay.
how much you can generate, but then you throw in the timing of the hour. So like you could produce 80 megawatts per hour. And
Potentially.
yeah, so that's where you have the time factor of how much you're generating, but the 80 megawatts is like you would have an 80 megawatt generator, and then you could run that generator as much as you could, but at any one time you would only get 80 megawatts out of it.
Well, kind of put this in perspective to me, the generators on Center Hill Dam, they don't run constantly because, it varies from use, and you don't store, electricity doesn't store very well unless you've got a method to do that. So I understand the 2 cent cost there, but for instance, the TVA dam there in Center Hill, how many megawatts does it produce?
I don't know that one, but what I can give you an example of is like the Gallatin fossil plant. it's got 4 units in Gallatin that produce, that they're each 250 megawatt units. So out of that plant, there, it's about 1,000 megawatt plant.
Okay.
And that, the generators, 4 generators produce combined 1,000 megawatts
Yes,
over
sir.
whatever period of time they're running. So the 1 hour is kind of the unit.
Well, the 1 hour would be, it would be 1,000 megawatts per hour.
Okay,
Yes,
all
sir.
right.
So that's how you get the 1,000 megawatt hours.
Okay. It's an hour, the generator takes an hour to produce.
I'm still,
Capacity.
I'm still confused into the
About
time, the
60.
time slot, or the 80 megawatts, and how, I mean, this is what I'm confused. If you're capable of running 80,000 megawatts and sell it back at 2 cents a kilowatt, or anything less, it doesn't have to be 80, right? If we're only producing 40, we're selling it back at 2 cents. Okay. Help me, walk me through. If we produce 40,000 an hour in a 24-hour period, do we get to sell all that back, or is your time frame we're only buying back
You would be
per
selling back,
24-hour period, per
you would be
week,
selling
per
back
month?
megawatt hours to TVA, and or for simple, like what you use at your home is a kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
Because the 80 megawatts, and Jeff, you help me, because there's 2 components to energy, and like how I would compare it to is like your gas tank, is that you can put 20 gallons in there, but till you take off, that's when you so many mile per hour you can go so far. So there's an energy usage component, which is the kilowatt hours, which I'm talking in megawatt hours because
Yeah.
we're talking about a large system here. But so you've got a generator that at any given time can produce 80 megawatts. So then however long it runs is how many kilowatt hours it will produce. And you're paid for the kilowatt hours that it produces over an amount of time. And so 80 megawatts that it would, your generator can produce 80 megawatts, and then however many hours it runs is how many
Okay.
megawatt hours it would produce. Does
Okay.
that help? I know
Yeah.
it's not the best
It would be
explanation.
metered,
Yeah,
and that meter would capture how many megawatt hours you're putting on the grid,
yeah,
and you're paid for those megawatt hours.
okay,
So if
Just like the consumption at your home.
yeah.
It's really very little
2
difference.
cents per megawatt.
So
Kilowatt, 2 cents per
Kilowatt.
kilowatt.
2 cents per kilowatt.
And it's is 100 or 1,000? 1,000 kilowatts per
Thank you.
megawatt.
So if we produced 40 megawatts per day for a year, what's the revenues at 2 cents? How does that figure out? I'll do that math.
Let me try this. So it's 1,000 kilowatts per hour, megawatts per hour. Is that what you said? Generate about 1,000?
No, it depends on what size your unit is. It's whatever size your unit is at 80 if it's 80 megawatts, then however many hours it runs is how many megawatt hours it produces, which it's probably easier talking kilowatt hours. If you're at home and say you're using 10 kilowatt, your demand would be 10 kW, and that runs for an hour, then you've used 10 kilowatt hours in 1 hour. And so then hour after hour, 24 times that would be, if you use 10 kilowatt hours every hour, then you've got 240 kilowatt hours that you've used over a day's time.
So we really don't know because we don't know how much that Huntsville plant generates.
Yeah, I think that's what goes back.
That's the missing-
That's why he asked how big the system was to begin with.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
once you
that's why-
know,
Throwing out 40, just to get a feel of,
You could have a
revenues.
capacity of 80, but it might only be putting out 40.
Well, that's why I say, 40 for
It's gonna
4
vary,
years'
because I
time.
mean, even like at Gallatin, that depending upon what the factors are, like the type of coal that they use, things like that, that can change the
Yes.
output. And I'm certain that the trash would vary day to day of how much is being put in there
We'd have to-
and burned.
We'd have to back into that to determine what is trash stream coming into, would determine how much we're generating. So
Well, and then
taking
too,
Rutherford County's trash wouldn't be enough to pay for the plant.
No.
6,000 a year, 40,000 for the city, 40 for the county.
We'd have to take all of Middle Tennessee city trash.
I think it's right.
86 months.
And all, might have to take hospital.
Because if I were in your position, I think where I would start with is what size facility are you even looking at? Because until you really kind of know what size facility you want to install and what the costs are, the economies of scale of how much garbage you have that can operate it 24 hours a day, those are questions that I would want to know. And then that's because from us, it's really easy that we'll pay you 2 cents per kilowatt hour that you produce. And
We could do some CSP on this and get them a
You
report.
can do what?
We got a program we partnered with the TVA on called Comprehensive Services, and we get one of their engineers. We consider TVA a third party, okay?
Sure.
Because you're our customer, right? So we rely on them, some of their engineering staff. But we could get you. I don't want to tell you it's an ROI, but we could give you an idea of what you could expect to see that if you saw something constantly, a constant number coming through there. We could get that for you. I could calculate it to you now, but I'm not sitting right here. I'd have to write down some numbers and make sure I got everything right. But
Well, maybe we'll stick around afterwards here.
we can get you close on that.
One other quick question. I know you're talking about coal as far as the fossil plant there. We've looked at these pellets that they're generating up here at Wastaway. Have y'all done any study on them, or are you looking at using their pellets in your system, or can you? Just curious if y'all looked at them. I see you shaking your head.
Because it's clean fuel, it's not coal, and it doesn't produce coal ash, which is a problem.
well, and coal. I worked at coal plants, so I'm kind of going back. But TVA's system, on our system right now, 15% of our generation is coal. About 56% of it is no CO2 emissions. That we've got 42% of our generation comes from nuclear, 10% from hydro, and then you've got about 29 that's gas, which is a lot lower emission. And so when I say coal, only about 15% of our fleet now is because that's another thing when you start talking about emissions, because Middle Tennessee Electric and TVA, that our emissions, that it's about 829 pounds of coal per megawatt hour. And so I don't know if that's a consideration when you start talking about, burning trash here, but that's a question that I would be curious about too, is that if you're concerned about the environment, what's the CO2? Because when you burn something, there's emission.
Say that one more time, Chris. There's 829 pounds.
And for Middle Tennessee Electric system, I looked at it today, it's about 825 pounds of CO2 per megawatt hour generated.
And
So
there may
that-
even be some FEMA or TEMA regulations on how many we could produce, Mike. I mean, 80 megawatts may generate too many emissions.
And I don't want to get stuck on 80
There's all kinds of
megawatts just because I just took that as that's the maximum.
That's the
That's
threshold.
the starting
Yeah,
point.
that falls
Sell
under
it, that's-
here.
makes sense. Look, may I jump, to kind of expand Robert's question, do you have any solid waste to energy anywhere on your grid
Not that we own and operate.
that you purchase from anyone?
I'm
Is
not-
anyone participating in that program that you're aware of in the 7 states that TVA covers?
That we do have people in the dispersed power program,
Yeah, that's what
but I'm aware of some cogen, like I said, where people are on site. I'm not aware of any gas, or I say gas. I'm not aware of any trash plants that we buy power from.
So this would be a first if we.
To my knowledge, and I don't want to mislead you, but to my knowledge,
But
I'm
you're
not
more of
aware.
an expert than we've had thus far.
Okay.
And Becky may know as well if there's anybody.
That I'm aware of.
All right, let me ask you this, Chris. Do you have any counterparts in your profession across the U.S. or Canada that you could reach out to that might have waste-to-energy facilities that you might glean some information on output? Just asking.
I would not. I would think that might be a conversation suited more for someone in this group to take that on, because I'm just not,
Okay.
like, I don't have that type of access to it. That to kind of who we are as TVA, that we're energy, environment, and economic development. Well, our energy, that we do what we call an integrated resource plan every 5 years, and we look at the least cost, and that's where we start. But then obviously emissions have been that we're leading the nation in our reduction. That from 2005, I think we've reduced emissions by about 60%, and by in the next few years we'll be down around 600 pounds of CO2 per megawatt hour. So that's been a focus, but that's the process we go through. And this program, that burning trash, is more like that we'll buy that power, but that doesn't fall into what we're looking at as far as our fleet.
Would you have to count our emissions in your total? I mean, granted, we're tiny,
Yeah.
but if you
We
take
would
on our
just-
power.
This program's pretty clean. That the dispersed power program, all we're doing is buying your
Okay.
power. That's all we would be doing.
I don't know if Huntsville would volunteer the information, but, and Becky may know. Is there a resource out there that we could Google or ask on what they might feel the CO2 output would be for a waste-to-energy facility? I mean, they're all over the world. Do you have any suggestions on where we might find? Because I mean, if we're going to pollute more than coal, well, this may be a dead issue. I mean, I guess you could spend millions of dollars on scrubbers.
I'm trying to.
Would eSource have any?
Not eSource, but eSource might. But I know that through the Scope 2 CO2, that a government agency keeps up with it, and I can't think of what it is right now for some reason. I think the EPA. Like, I think you can go to the EPA site, and there's information on this, or it's like as far as emissions. That would make sense to me that it's under EPA. But I know that I don't. Unfortunately, I can't remember it right now, but I could
It's a start.
research and follow up that.
Somebody
that I think
surely
is-
across the world's got some kind of documentation on
Yeah.
how we're polluting the air.
EPA may have a restriction as well.
Yeah.
How much power to generate 125 homes?
Megawatt.
1 megawatt?
1 megawatt's roughly 125 homes, yes.
With what average usage of 1,200 kilowatt hours a month.
Do you have any idea, and again, this may be privileged information, but I'll ask it anyway, to get a kind of a scope. What does, like a Amazon distribution center, what is their electric usage? Kilowatt, megawatt, gigawatt, zigawatt? I mean, I would think they would burn a lot of power.
I can tell you a facility like Amazon. I'm
Okay.
not going to tell you what Amazon uses because we have one.
Okay.
But a facility of that size can be around 6 to 8 megawatts.
Per day, per month, per minute?
Capacity.
Capacity.
In their consumption. That would be something that would be the most that they would consume at one time.
8 megawatts.
Which we can relate that to the capacity of this plant's output.
Okay.
So it'll be simple.
So okay, so do the math. 8 megawatts at 2 cents a kilowatt is $16,000? Or am I way off? Am I off a zero?
Yeah, 16,000 is what that's per hour.
Or per time
Per
consumed.
time consumed.
It could be,
It's-
that's their,
80 megs
It's measured. It's-
per hour,
it's metered.
$1,600.
that's their maximum, that's their
1,600 or
facility's
16,000?
capacity
1,600.
What they consume.
to consume,
They're
yes.
not the only thing on
2
the grid.
cents per
Right.
A little different, but it's comparable.
You see, we have a little disconnect. We're
Yes,
trying
sir.
to convert it into
Well,
hours.
let me, I'm gonna do the math real quick, but just, I wanna write it down so I can see what I'm doing.
Do that.
What about like a Bridgestone or
Am I close saying 160 an hour?
a
$160 an hour? I don't know. It's either
There's
1,600,
1,000
or 1,600.
kilowatts in a megawatt, right?
Yes, sir. Chris can,
Yeah, he's working.
he's gonna work on it. He can get it for you.
Do you have any idea how much a school uses?
A high school
Yes.
in Rutherford County, I don't mind telling you that, it's your county.
Sure.
So a high school in Rutherford County, a good sized school produces around a megawatt, around 1,000 kilowatts, you know, give or take here and there, depends on, you know, we have, honestly, we may have a couple of capacity, what they may take on at one time. So it's a little different for the way I'm talking about it, but
See, that's still what's wrong.
See, yeah,
I can't convert that in my head.
Yeah,
We do 11 million a year in county, in electricity for county buildings. Can $11 million be divided by your 10 cent or 8 cent? Can you tell us how many megawatts we use in a year by knowing we spend $11 million? Generally speaking, is it 11 million divided by something? Come up with a,
It would be hard to back into that because of demand and
okay,
energy
you're back
usage.
to
well, you pay a
electricity.
different amount for peak demand than you do for regular demand.
because we charge on peak too, it's different.
I just did the math
Couldn't sit here
for,
and tell you.
if you had an 8 megawatt system
Couldn't sit here and tell you.
Well, the thing about
that
schools,
operated 24 hours a day, that in 1 month, you would make $11,520. That's it. Because I just took 8 megawatts times 1,000, converts it to kilowatts, and then I multiplied it times 720 hours, which is how many hours there are in a month. That's round the clock. And then I multiplied that times 2 cents a kilowatt hour, and that's how I arrived at 11,520. Now, I don't mind walking through that if anybody wants to.
Per what period of time, 11,000 per month?
Per month. Yes, sir. And that's an 8
Yeah, I
megawatts.
know that's
And if you
very-
multiplied that by 10, you get to your 80. So that'd be
110,000 basically a month if you had an 80 megawatt system.
So back up to 11,000 a month per megawatt.
Per
Kilo-
11,520 would be for 8,000, roughly 5 million kilowatt hours a month.
so Jeff, you said one megawatt for a school. Now, wouldn't that number kind of be up and down because schools closed for 3 months?
Yeah, I'm saying.
So it could peak at 3.
That may be the maximum that they would use at any certain time during the month. It could be, oh yeah, when they're not filled up with kids, it's way down. Yes, sir. And that's why it's be difficult for me to give you a number because it varies so much.
What would you say a Nissan or a Bridgestone would
Three-shift factory.
do? Like a 3-shift factory?
I look at that bill every month.
So brought you charge.
It's a whole lot more, I would say.
Yes, sir. I'll just tell you this, Nissan doesn't consume 80 megawatts in demand charges. So that, even that plant is small, but what the program limitations are. Does that make sense?
A
Very
day
good
per month?
mathematician. If we were selling you 80 megawatts today, what would we garner a month?
Roughly $110,000.
110,000 a month.
Assuming we got.
24/7.
Yeah, assuming we have a facility that
Oh,
can.
you're doing what?
And what Tim just said is critical.
That's-
You're talking about round the
24/7.
clock,
7
24/7.
days a week.
That's where he mentioned kind of knowing how much trash and is it going to be constant? Does it?
So did I misunderstand
Here's
that?
that formula again.
But you'll buy, if we can produce 80 megawatts, then you would buy it.
Yes, if we can constantly produce 80 megawatts.
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever, but that would be your maximum.
But
Where are
to
we?
the 110,000 a
Yeah.
month is where he's getting.
Yeah, 80,000 cents.
Yeah.
Tim, Chris, Mr. Templeton, would you please restate your formula one more time? You were very concise, I just need to hear it again, please.
Okay, yes, the formula I used was just a random number.
Yeah.
I took 8 megawatts I multiplied that times 1,000, which that converts it to kilowatts. And then I multiplied it times 720, which is the amount of hours. It's 720 hours in a month. And then that gives you I think 5.1 million kilowatt hours per month. And then I multiplied that times 0.002, which is 2 cents per kilowatt hour. Am I doing my math right?
0.02?
0.002, because it's 2 cents.
Wouldn't it be zero?
4.02.
Should be
It's 1,000.
0.02.
0.002.
You mean 0.00.
Oh, to convert it to the kilowatt back.
Well, now we're talking about the money part, the 0.00.
0.002 is not 2 cents.
It's 2 cents per thousand.
Okay. That's what was
See, that's where I failed in math in college, right there. I'm with you, brother.
Yeah, so 0.02 is 2 cents per
Come up
thousand.
with
Yes, sir.
But best case scenario would be $110,000 a month. If everything worked exactly, we produced 80 megawatts per hour, 24 hours.
So the unknown is, how much trash does it take to produce X amount of megawatts? And do we have that in Rutherford County? Do we have that in 2 counties, 5 counties, the whole state, the whole southeast region? Don't know yet. Don't know yet.
We do know how many tons we're guaranteed, 86,000 a year.
We know what the residential,
Yeah.
but if we could tie in the commercial waste streams, like MTSU and others, then, and the hospitals.
Well, and the other thing we don't know, which is hugely important, is
Harmful waste energy.
how much CO2 pollutant would trash produce, and is that a deal killer?
And I would assume there's some type of, that I would assume whoever is talking about this system, that there would be some type of management of that through a stat, that's just like anything that produces like coal that produces ash, that it goes through a whole nother system to remove the ash.
Yeah, seriously.
So you're not just blowing ash out of the stacks.
Yeah.
So.
That just adds a lot of zeros to the cost.
But I get because what Jeff said, that I feel like what we would welcome the opportunity to do is, once that a lot of these details are together, that it's our job to be an unbiased third party to come in and just evaluate numbers. And I mean, I'm not the greatest at that. I kind of...
You're the greatest in the room.
No doubt.
So with that being said, but we have people that do this, that if we know the specifics of it, they can do a report and just, it's not biased one way or the other. It's just strictly about numbers. Does this work? What, like Jeff said, that what's the estimated return on investment based on, we would only be as good as the assumptions, is what I would say. But it's our job to come in, because we're not trying to sway one way or the other. We just want to be concise and clear and honest. And we've been here 80-something years, that we're not trying to sell anything. We just want to be your trusted energy advisor and provide you accurate information and give you that information to be able to make a good business decision.
Yeah.
That's,
So the income would be a little over $1 million a year. Is that a fair statement? You said 100,000.
At an 80 gig.
Right, so you're going to have an income of a little over $1 million a year. So your income is not even going to pay you interest on what you put out.
Well, the facility in Huntsville produces 550 kilowatt hours. So per hour, so that's enough energy to power a home for 2 weeks, based on what they're saying.
A home?
They're saying they produce 550 kilowatts per hour. Does that sound right?
In Huntsville,
That's what it says on their thing.
they're producing steam.
They're saying that this energy from waste and landfill in Covanta says they produce 550 kilowatts per hour.
I think they're doing both now, a combination. They've been doing steam for years for heating and cooling. But I think recently they've started generating power too.
And that makes
They've been
sense,
talking about it, but I don't know that they've completed it yet. But they-
because that would be a lot of times how you see these set up is that somebody generates power, they use that power, then they sell the excess. And that's normally how you see these types of systems set up, is that there's some form of, that it's an industrial process that produces a lot of heat that then you can
Yes.
steam to turn a generator, but you're using some of that internally, and then whatever your facility's not using, you can sell back. And that's a common setup of how I've seen
It
it.
falls under cogen, that they're all co-generate, all those facilities are co-generating.
Yes, because they're using and selling is what I would say.
Becky, I got a question, Mr. Chairman. Becky, didn't we estimate to build the facility that we would need to be around 750 million?
That's what they said to us in Huntsville.
Yeah, so about 750 million, they're out of capacity, they're gonna have to add on. So if you figure 750 million to build the plasma gasification plant, and let's just bump it from $1 million to $2 million revenue, take you 375 years to pay that off. But then we're not taking into account what we would be able to charge for per ton coming in. That could be subtracted from that as well, if we could get, waste management and all the other
Yeah.
private haulers or whoever to bring their trash to us, but it's gonna have to,
I would imagine.
Rutherford County's not enough. They'll pay for their plant.
I would guess, and this is just the guess, you know, the old saying about assuming. I would assume that operating costs on a facility like that are much higher than some other conventional.
We didn't talk about operating.
Yeah.
Do we have a figure, Becky, on operation?
I don't off the top of my head.
And our numbers are 24/7 also, so the operating costs skyrocket
Yeah.
24/7. Which is a great number. I mean, it's a great place to have a conversation.
Yeah.
The 15% coal that you use, is that all tied up in contracts with coal producing entities that you have to use a certain amount of coal? You couldn't change over to a clean fuel?
So I want to make sure I understand your question. Are you talking about take the actual coal facility and burn something else up, use a different fuel?
Use a clean fuel rather than a...
It's just mechanically, it doesn't work like that. Like
Okay.
that you can't burn coal in a nuclear unit, and you can't burn trash in a coal unit.
I'm talking about a fuel brick, if you will. So
Those are set up because how those work, and this is probably way more information than anybody wants to know, but coal comes in, coal goes through a pulverizer. It's basically just, it's like air almost, and it's pulverized. There are in the corners of the boilers that you have a fire inside this boiler, and you've got water wall tubes you heat up this water that becomes steam. It's under pressure, so that's how you get to, at Gallatin, it's, I think, once it gets there, that I forget the pressures and the temperature, but it's about 1,000 degrees, and it's superheated steam. But you have burnt, like in the corners of these boilers, this is where all the coal comes in. There's a fireball in there. It heats up the water walls. Water walls keep it under pressure so it doesn't become steam until it's superheated steam. But that's, so to what you're talking about, to throw a brick of trash in there, it just doesn't work that way. That mechanically, each source, because like natural gas units, it's a whole different combustion process. That's a shorter answer, is that each fuel has a different combustion process. Because you have to have fire to heat this, to make
Well,
the
you would have
steam.
to retrofit to make something like that would probably work anyway, wouldn't
I don't even know that you could.
it? That you could.
Like that, I would say that, like, because I know at Gallatin, and I keep talking about Gallatin, but that's where I started my career, so I'm more familiar with that. But just to swap from the old like high sulfur content coal to go to a lower sulfur Powder River Basin type coal, which is it's a lower heat rate, but less CO2 emissions and sulfur. That just to do that, it was a major upgrade to do that. That I just don't think that mechanically you could use a different fuel source.
We're just trying to discount what will and what won't work, so.
Jeff and Tim, anything to add? You've been somewhat quiet.
Yeah, like I was telling Mayor, I'm used to delivering electrons, not generating, so.
They're just a distributor.
Yeah, so, you know, yeah, I'd love to add something. We're your partner.
Yeah.
If we can help you, we will.
Yeah.
I don't know how yet.
We just can't use your lines to distribute our own electricity.
Well, if it's 80 megawatts, no, but if it's smaller than that, yeah, maybe. It still go through the DPP. It just depends. I'm not sure the parameters of all that. You might be able to speak to that, but if it was...
I don't think that you cannot will power on anybody's transmission or drop back to the distribution system. You can't will power. I'm pretty certain the wholesale power contract does not allow for power to be wheeled on the system.
The phrase you're using, willed, W-H-E?
W-H.
W-I-L-L, what?
WHELL.
Okay. Like roll.
Like a roll tire wheel, yeah. Okay. Chris, may I ask what county you live in?
I live in Davidson County, but I'm from Gallatin.
Well, then you are a stakeholder in this conversation. Because as you know, we take all of your trash. What you put out on the curb comes to this county. So you are officially a stakeholder in this situation.
And
Congratulations.
and I'll be honest, that I mean, what we welcome the opportunity is once more specifics come to this, that what Jeff was talking about through the comprehensive services program, that we're happy to give an unbiased evaluation and real, I mean, numbers don't lie. That we're happy to do calculations. We're happy to, to better understand and try to and come back and sit down and talk about it. We can provide a report that it's written where everybody can sit and look and talk about it, and we're happy to do that at no cost to you. That Middle Tennessee Electric provides that at no cost to the county.
Well, we certainly appreciate that. Wanting us to help.
Yes.
Before you turn him loose.
Yeah.
I've just sat here and listened. In the beginning, you said you were over 7 states. Is that correct?
The Tennessee, yes, sir.
And no one in the 7 states are converting their trash to electricity and selling it to you today.
Not that I'm aware of.
Give me your professional opinion of why not.
Money. I mean, just right out of the gate, that my professional opinion is that if somebody can make money doing it, somebody would be doing it. And I mean, and it's been said several times that, I mean, if you live in Hawaii or somewhere like that where it's a different scenario, but here, I mean, TVA, Middle Tennessee Electric, has been very deliberate to keep our rates low. And I mean, you don't see all these economic development announcements, that this was said to me today at another meeting that we were talking about. He's from Indiana, was here, that they have a plant there and a plant here, and he said, I'm glad to sit in here and hear about these programs, because he said we get beat everywhere in the rest of the United States because of TVA being here. And
Well, that's why Congress doesn't like TVA. I mean, folks in Connecticut are paying through the roof for their electricity, and they don't like it because we're sanctioned through Congress.
Well, and we TVA, Middle Tennessee Electric, have been very deliberate that while we feel like we have tried to meet when it comes to emissions, when it comes to low rates, when it comes to community responsibility, that we've tried to do all of those things but we've done it at a low cost, that we have not gone out and spent a ton of money. That, I mean, I'm very proud to say that about 6 years ago, we were at $26 billion worth of debt, and we're now down below 22, and within the next few years will be. So we have had a focus on improving reliability, that lowering our emissions, but also lowering rates to be able to, that we're at a point now that we're looking at about 10 years of flat rates. And so that's something that where I think as time goes on, you'll see our rates be more competitive because we've raised them over the last few years, but that was to pay down this debt. But now on the debt service, we'll be saving money there. So what I would like to say is that we've tried to be very responsible about how we've approached our business to improve emissions and quality of life. And I mean, one of our 3 E's is environment. So if we were just polluting everywhere, that's not who we want to be and not the type partner we want to be to our local community. So we're trying to meet all those responsibilities. But I would welcome the opportunity through Middle Tennessee Electric for all of us to support and just run the numbers, and if we need to come back and talk about it, and because we're not trying to sway you either way. We just want to provide you an honest opinion to our local partners.
I have one more question. You made the comment you would give us 2 cents a
Kilowatt hour. Yes, sir.
and probably now we're paying 9 to 10.
It's probably a little lower than that because I mean
The school's probably a little lower than that.
Yeah.
So we're really just gaining 2 cents against the 9 or 10 that we're paying. So that's not taking very much away from our 11 million, Mr. Dodd, that we're spending a year to spend $750 million to accumulate. So, you know,
I'm so struggling with the same equation.
So far it makes 0 cents.
Revenue versus cost.
Mr. Nolan might have some.
Well, if you're going to look at costs, look at all of it. You need to throw tipping fees on top of that. You also need to figure in upkeep, who's going to run this plant. Are we going to have employees or somebody else going to sub it out? I mean, let's not just dismiss something without looking at all of it.
I wasn't dismissing it, Mr. P. I was just bringing the numbers to the front.
How many tons we could sell?
I haven't been to Huntsville since probably 2002. And here's the information they gave me. And it's just like this gentleman here said, there's nobody going to be doing this if they're not making money. Well, I promise you that they're making money at Huntsville. And when I went down there in 2002, they were completely generating steam, which took care of the heating and cooling for Redstone Arsenal, that entire complex there. And I asked them then, what did it cost you to build this plant? And I was told $100 million at that time, and that would say around 2000, the year 2000. And I said, okay, how did you finance it? And they said, well, we did what governments normally do, a 30-year note, I think they told me, or 20-year. He said, but we had enough revenues the first 5 years to pay off the note. We just spread it out over there. So they've got revenues coming in, and I think that's something that we need to look at too. It's more effective if we can just go to steam, which is what they're doing. We don't have to fool with TVA then. If we had people there that could use steam that we were generating, for instance, Bridgestone cures their tires with steam. I don't know how much they would use and if they would be even interested in it, but I'm just saying there's a whole lot there we hadn't looked at yet.
How would you get that steam to a Bridgestone?
Well, they pipe it straight over there and with insulated pipes. That's how they do it.
Your generation, if you're generating steam, whatever, it would have to be positioned right beside it. I mean, because then if you're not right beside them, then you start talking about a whole nother conversation of right of way, going across people's property. I mean, I'm just trying to be realistic about what if you're not, if your two properties are not joining, then you run into exactly what you're talking about, that now you got to run a steam line under somebody's property or something like that, and you're talking about right of ways. And I can promise you that in this three right here, that right of ways can cause more work and issues than you could ever imagine. But it's a sensitive subject, but that would be a realistic thing. It would have to be adjoined.
Well, one other thing while we got you here to ask the questions, I do a lot of reading and research on this, and one of the things that I'm concerned about, and people that have talked to me about it, are concerned about the CO2 on burning trash or some kind of generation. And I was reading where there's a company, and I believe it's in Sweden, where they actually have a unit. It's about a car size, just kind of, weighs maybe 3 tons or something like that, but it actually goes on top of, say, a smokestack, and it pulls the CO2 out of it. And they're actually using that. They put it in greenhouses for one to grow plants. They also use it for generation of power and use it in industrial sites. And actually, they also pipe it and put it back in the ground in underground wells. But have y'all looked at any of that? I know y'all are giving green energy options out there. Have y'all looked at any?
We have a R&D group, and I can't comment to what they are, but I can promise you that things like that what I would say about Europe is if you go to Europe and you walk out of the room, that they've got automated sensors that cut the electricity off, things like that, that their power, I mean, they're paying 25 cents a kilowatt hour where we're paying 10 here, that it is a much more expensive than how they generate power and things like that. So it's a different animal, but what you're talking about, that we research things like that, but at the end of the day, our responsibility to the folks of the Tennessee Valley is to keep rates as low as feasible. That plays into every decision we make, is about keeping rates as low as possible. That we still understand at the end of the line that there's a lady or man that may be on a fixed income of a couple $100 a month, that we may look and evaluate things like that, but at the end of the day, that integrated resource plan I referred to, that we're going to make the lowest cost decision. And like with that you start looking at bang for your buck, feasibility, and if it was feasible, we would be doing it. Because I mean, just with our emissions, what I call success, that what we've done there, that it's deliberate. And I know that we work with a lot of European companies trying to attract them to this area, and they want to know about our emissions, and we've been pretty successful with that. So it's a lot of technology, but we only go with proven technologies is what I would say. And we evaluate the effectiveness and the price.
My niece lives in London, and before she takes a shower, she has to go flip the switch to start the water warm up. And she says, by the time I go fix me a cup of tea and drink the cup of tea, then it might be ready to go take a shower, get the kids to bed.
Matt, did you have a comment?
Two, actually.
Yes, sir.
I don't know how many of you have actually been in my office, but hanging in my office is a portrait. It was from the early 80s, and it is a Rutherford County trash to steam plant. And it was intended, if it was ever done, to be built in Laverne and provide steam from Bridgetown. That was the intent of it.
Just for that one plant.
I've never been in his office, by the way.
Why?
But
Give me an invitation. There you go.
But county engineering found it in a closet, and they took a picture of it and sent it to me. Would you like to have it? Absolutely. And then they found all the paperwork that went with it, the engineering and all that kind of stuff. And if you remember the old Nashville steam plant, it was about that same type of operation. So would that still be in operation today? Probably not, with all the emissions changes and all that. That's the reason the other ones, the one in Gallatin closed, and Nashville did as well. But if we had our school system, all 46 schools, 46, 49 schools sitting next door to each other, and we created a waste to energy plant that would supply the electricity directly to those schools on our own grid, would we not have to pay TVA or Middle Tennessee Electric a fee to be on standby in case we needed your electricity? Even if we use all of our own electricity, we'd still have to be paying the power company just to be there for us if we need to.
Yeah, not a whole lot, but yes.
So,
It wouldn't be a whole lot if you got 49 schools. Got that kind of load.
Right.
It'd sound like a whole lot. It wouldn't be a whole lot, but it'd sound like a whole lot.
right, but where I'm going with that is if you're not going to get off the grid unless you totally get off the grid. And if you get off the grid and yours goes down, then what are you going to do? So, you're going to pay for electricity through one of them, to one of them, whether you use it or not.
And to your point, why that is because if Middle Tennessee Electric were a standby power company, they would still have to have transformers distribution lines. There's still equipment and infrastructure that they would have to pay for and supply to do what you're talking about. But that's where the cost is born, because there are facilities attached to, I mean, there's fixed costs to generate and distribute power.
All right. Before I let you go, a couple of action items I think we need to close up to do a little research on our own. One is we need to visit the EPA website to understand what potential emissions output may be on a waste to energy system and see if we can track that down. The other is we need to reach out to Huntsville and or other waste to energy systems and see if we can find out what kind of electric output a variety of different sized facilities. In other words, ask the question, how many tons of trash are you putting in and what kind of electric output is a ton of trash or 1,000 tons of trash equal to? We need to get a grasp on what that number is to really close the loop on the viability of this discussion. So we can divvy up that assignment. Mac, do you have any working relationship with anybody at Huntsville still? Do you think they would share that information on the Huntsville side?
Doc John is his actual name. He goes by Doc all the way. The reason we couldn't get him before Christmas, he was finishing up a doctorate degree.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So he's finished with that now. So he would be a good source to come in and speak to what y'all been speaking about, waste to energy, which is steam. And then he can clarify what they do with if they do an electricity now or not. Last time I was down there, they were not. And then he would also be a good source if you're looking at some type of authority, governance type stuff, that he could explain how theirs is set up.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's critical. This gentleman is the resource, and he's Huntsville.
He's got a daughter that lives in Nashville, so if we get him to come here, he'll go eat dinner with her.
So I think the action item, if I may suggest, is Mac, would you please continue and he be at our next meeting if we're going to follow up on this specific topic?
Talking about next Wednesday's meeting, or?
Our next, whatever this special committee, after Republic, whatever.
That would be the 29th of January would be the next available slot. If you'll see if he's available.
You okay with that?
And
So we're gonna have 4 meetings this month?
well, there's 3 Wednesdays this month.
So whatever Wednesday, I don't know, Mac. It is every Wednesday.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
So you want us to find out really too what's going to happen?
Yeah, if somebody wants to volunteer for the EPA website to check on if there's some type of emissions information, and then the other one is to maybe just Google waste to energy electric output. I mean, Doc Holloway may have some information related to Huntsville, I'm sure, but there's waste energy facilities across the U.S. and across the world that maybe there's information on the internet that we can find. So if anybody wants to volunteer to do that little bit of research, say yes. If not, I'll take one and somebody else take the other.
I'll do whichever one you want me to.
Why don't you take, I'll do the EPA emissions, and why don't you take the energy to kilowatt output, the waste to energy, or I'm sorry, yeah, the trash to kilowatt output.
Basically, how many tons of trash?
Yeah,
Will
just
we-
see if you can research a variety of different sized facilities, and you may, if you find somebody within the U.S., you might even make a phone call or two and see if somebody, so you see who you represent, what we're doing, and we need some help.
I can Google too.
Okay, all right. Anybody else have any questions for this rare opportunity to have these 3 experts with us here?
We appreciate you.
Yeah. We really do. You have no idea how much we appreciate your volunteerism to come and speak with us. It has been eye-opening and certainly a brush up on the math skills. Very helpful.
And I think, Mr. Chairman, both these agencies have the same philosophy that we do. We're trying to save the taxpayers as much money as possible, so that's why everything's on top of the table. It's an issue that has us all concerned because Middle Point will be closing in several, well, say a few years, but few enough.
Yeah.
So we have to be proactive and start looking for ways. So your input's been very valuable to us.
Yeah. If you, and to continue, if you have any epiphany in the middle of the night that you said, "Dadgum, I wish I'd said that," please just reach out to Mayor Ketron or Deputy to the Mayor, Steve Sandlin, and
Just write it down and call me next week.
Well, let us have your contact information.
Yeah, if you,
Don't we I gave him my last card.
as long as the mayor or Steve has it,
Jeff can get me anytime.
he can pass it down. So
I got an epiphany 2 o'clock in the morning.
I'll be honest that I appreciate the opportunity to be engaged at the front end of this because I'm glad it's not like sometimes where we're called after the fact and there's no time to discuss it, talk about it. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here, be engaged early, and if we need to work through the comprehensive services program to provide further evaluations once all this research is done, then we most certainly want to do that. That'd be helpful.
Yeah. I'd take advantage of that. We have a lot of, Nissans, and if they're approached by a vendor for an LED lighting upgrade or something like that, they'll use the CSP program to get a report that is, again, third-party verified. And it's just numbers,
Right.
It's not a sales pitch.
I'll be the first to tell you, we do not know or take advantage of all the tools out there that are available to us, so we appreciate you guys letting us know what's out there. And Chris, I'll tell you, you are a stakeholder, because there may be one day when Rutherford County says, "Yeah, we're not taking Davidson County trash anymore," and then he's gonna pile up.
Get your wallet
We'll be just like TVA then, we'll decide what to do.
We'll set the price.
No more wheeling trash.
That's right. We'll make a deal. Yes.
Next one,
Yes.
January 29th, right?
I already closed my calendar, Rachel.
January 29th.
January 22nd is our next.
Or 22nd is Republic, 29th will be
Yes.
Halloween.
Well, have we committed to that? And to Mac's point, are we
Well,
going to meet
I
every
guess-
Wednesday? Just if we need.
You don't have anything on the 29th.
Not yet, but that's what he's going to
We're
try.
going to try and get Doc Holloway.
Or do we?
Yeah, he's trying to get done.
We haven't had a consensus among this group if we wish to volunteer to meet on the 29th. I'm just saying that.
29th of what, January?
January.
Yeah, I'd rather do it sooner myself.
Well, the only, oh, I see what you're saying.
If this guy's
Oh,
available.
the 29th is supposed to wait.
You mean before the 29th, is that what you're saying, Robert?
No, I'm saying the 29th would be fine.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I'd like to get it this month if possible.
Yeah.
So we're doing the 22nd and
The
the
29th,
29th?
the 22nd, we are definitely having a meeting, and that is when Republic is presenting their plan. So that's a do not miss meeting. The next meeting is, the next Wednesday is the 29th, which is open right now. We have no real official meeting set, but if Holloway can join us, we would fill that slot with Holloway. If not,
Holiday.
I'm sorry,
Holiday.
Holloway. Yeah,
Holiday.
yeah, I'm thinking the street I used to live on, Holloway, Holiday. Like the Western, old Western, yeah, I couldn't play it. Yeah, never mind, that's, okay.
Going on now.
So if we cannot get the Huntsville speaker for Wednesday the 29th, we may not need to have a meeting at that point. So I guess we'll just wait to hear from Mac. Is that fair?
So is that a coffee donut thing or a beer and pretzel thing?
Well, that would be a 6 o'clock Donuts in beer.
We can go back. We can go back to 5:30. The only reason we were at 6 because we had purchasing.
Yeah, we could do 5:30. Yeah, okay. Because I know he's got travel time, so. Anything else? Everybody clear? Meeting adjourned.
Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you.